She's one of those environmental warriors that we've been learning about, that we learned about before. So, Shannon, I don't know if you'd like to perhaps introduce yourself a little bit more. I just want to share with you that at the moment we've got young people from India, we've got young people from Cape Town, and I don't see anybody from Scotland or England at the moment, but if there is somebody, please give a shout out. And there's also people from Durban as well. So yeah, let's all just give a clap for Shannon being here with us. And then we're going to hand over to her and hear about this fantastic activism of hers and maybe learn something as well. So Shannon, over to you.
Okay, well, hi everyone. My name is Shannon, as Dr. Lange said. I am currently doing a PhD in cultural studies, but in my spare time, I participate in environmental justice activism in my community, which I'll speak about. Yeah, I volunteer and I'm on the steering committee of an organization called CCMS. And I look forward to getting to hear your stories and getting to chat to you a bit more later. So I've titled my presentation Localizing Environmental Justice, which I'll get into shortly. So what is the impact of fossil fuels, we may ask ourselves. Is it this image? Is it this? Or even this plastic in the middle of the Pacific Ocean? Now, you'd be correct to characterize all these images as climate injustices. However, when we see images like these, we are inclined to distance ourselves from environmental justice, and we don't see the local impact that climate injustice has on ourselves. So today I'll be talking to you about a community called, or a region called South Durban, which is situated on the east coast of South Africa. So I've just provided a little bit of a map. It starts on the tip of Durban Harbour, and it extends as far as Umkomaas, which is further south. So this is the map of South Africa, and we are in Durban, and from Durban, it's just to your south, okay? The region is littered with highly toxic pollutive industries. And as you can see, if you look at the South Durban Basin, it's basically bluff. It's this region here, it's this tiny region, but we are littered with highly toxic pollutive industries, including factories, as well as the biggest petrochemical refineries in Southern Africa, Saprif, which is owned by Shell, a Dutch company, and British Petroleum, as well as Engen, which is a Malaysian company. So just adjacent to these petrochemical industries, you see dwellings, so where people stay. And you can see that it's basically alongside these communities. And this is Saprif, and this is Engen, and behind Saprif is Mondi Paper and Pulp Refinery. These are the flats. So alongside this environmental scourge or the environmental injustice that you see in this area, you also have common issues that of poverty, as well as youth unemployment, and of course the grave health impacts that come along with it. So according to the National Environmental Management Act 107 of 1998, which can be found in the South African Constitution, environmental management must place people and their needs at the forefront of its concern and serve their physical, psychological, developmental, cultural, and social interests equitably. Development must be socially, environmentally, and economically sustainable. The reality in South Durban, however, is this. So we often have issues of or problems with flaring from the nearby refineries. It is not uncommon to have instances of smog coming from the smokestacks of these industries, as can be seen in this incident on the 11th of October 2006. And oftentimes when we wake up in South Durban, we joke and say that we don't know if it's a rainy cloud or the smoke from the stacks or the refineries. I think it was in 2006 as well when we had the oil spill into the Durban Bay area from the Island View storage facility. This was the impact to the fish. And we know that there's an entire ecosystem that revolves around this. So we have subsistence fisher folk in Durban who rely on fishing for their livelihood. However, when you have an issue of oil spilling into the ocean, or you have the issue of highly polluted industries, your food source is impacted, which thereby affects your health. More recently, on the 24th of March 2017, Durban was up in smoke from the Transnet warehouse facility where a fire started and the area just was gutted. And this was the impact. So I'm not sure if Prof. Dill can remember, we were at UKZN and the smog or the smoke was coming over. It impacted areas as far north as Ballito. And for once, the areas in the northern suburbs could feel what it was like to live in the smoke or to have to ingest the smoke, because the wind direction that day was not blowing towards the south. But this is not uncommon in South Durban. And more recently, on the 4th of December 2020, there was an explosion at the petrochemical plant Engen, where I showed you that, of course, it's basically a road that separates the community, the residents, from the refinery. Unfortunately, one of the, although no one died, a flare ended up burning a flat, an adjacent flat, where a young girl happened to be sleeping that day while her grandmother was hanging washing on the line, and she suffered severe burns from the blast. We had broad media coverage. I'm not sure if it extended internationally, I'm sure it did. And there was mass action taken by the organization that I'm a part of, the South Durban Community Environmental Alliance. However, to date, the committee that was formed to fight for environmental justice is still at loggerheads with Engen, who refuses to take responsibility for the explosion and also refuses to justly compensate the community for what they caused due to a lack of maintenance. Now, just to give you a bit of context, Engen is planning to close down their facility because it just doesn't make economic sense for them to refine petroleum in South Africa. And they've moved their operations to Malaysia, their home country or their home base. So they want to turn this petrochemical refinery into a storage facility. And as a result, they haven't been doing maintenance on this facility for, I think, over a decade. The fire or the explosion was as a result of not doing any maintenance. And at the heart of the problem are children. Children who play, children who live, children who school in this area and are exposed to the toxic chemicals released from these industries. The price we pay for dirty air. These images that I'm showing you are people who died from leukemia and other forms of cancer due to the exposure or being exposed to the dirty, toxic air. And this is an image of a father with his son, Stephen, from Merebank. The medicine is his own and his son's. A medical study has found that a majority of learners at Stephen's nearby school, Settlers Primary, have chronic asthma. So Settlers Primary is in an area, a previously Indian township called Merebank, where which is basically sandwiched between Engen, Sapref, and Mondi, and they bear the brunt of the issue. Unfortunately, what happens when you have industry so close to each other is that they don't take responsibility for the chemicals they emit. So when we do our air bucket samples, neither company wants to assume responsibility because they don't want to have to pay the price for what they're doing. So the people, or the casualties in this instance, are the images that you see on the slide. And unfortunately, this is an all too common occurrence. I've had more than 5 people, close family members, who have passed away from cancer-related illnesses. So profit before people. It should be the other way around, according to the National Environmental Management Act, but it really does seem like it's profit before people. Despite the near fatal disasters by the surrounding industry, there is still no emergency plan for South Durban. So in December, what happened was at around 7 o'clock in the morning, most people were still sleeping or waking up, and they heard this huge explosion, and no one knew what to do. People in a panic were packing their bags. If they had cars, they were getting into their cars and trying to exit. But the reality is that if it was more catastrophic, we would have had a major issue because people don't know what to do. So just after 1994, members of the community were told that if there were to be an industrial incident like the explosion or worse, people would have to all converge at this race course. It was called the Clarewood Race Course. However, a few years ago, Durban embarked on the harbour expansion project, which has now been put on hold. They wanted to expand the harbour and to move it, to make it a more viable option for bigger ships to come into the city, and obviously to make it the biggest port in Africa, so that we get all the traffic. And this logistics park was set up to house containers. Of course, that project has been put on hold, but our green lung has been taken away from us, and it was the last remaining green space in the area. So the organization I work with is the South Durban Community Environmental Alliance, known as SEDC. It's an environmental justice organization that was formed in 1996. It has 16 affiliate organizations, and we are vocal and vigilant grouping in terms of lobbying, reporting, and researching environmental incidents. The organization contributes towards the struggle for environmental justice and environmental health. So what does SEDC do? SEDC hosts awareness campaigns, workshops, protests, and meetings. They do GIS mapping of the South Durban area. They hand out community newsletters, they conduct health studies, they distribute posters and pamphlets, and they host talks at educational institutes, as well as hosting workshops for the community. So it's a local organization that lobbies against environmental injustices in South Durban and surrounding areas. These are images from some of our protests that we host, and as you can see, we have members young and old, all asking for the same thing. They want clean air. So what can you do? It's not all doom and gloom. You can join a local organization fighting against environmental justice or injustice in your community. You can hold government and big industries accountable. You can educate yourself on the policies on environmental management and report any injustices, and you can become a climate warrior. One such organization that has taken this struggle forward is the South African Waste Pickers Association, which is an amalgamation of people from different regions in South Africa, basically working together to recycle and separate our waste. I've always thought that this particular grouping should be formalized by government, as I think it plays an integral role in mitigating environmental injustices faced by people. And I thought to end this presentation, when we look at what you can do, we can look at this activist in Kodai Canal who rapped a song, and I'm quite excited to hear that we have Indian activists on this call, because Sophia Ashraf is from India, and I'll just share my sound to let you hear the rap that she came up with, which has since I think received 4 million views on YouTube, and has got widespread attention about the mess that Unilever left in Kodai Canal. I hope you enjoy.
Kodaikanal won't, Kodaikanal won't, Kodaikanal won't step down till you make amends now. This is the story of Kodai's frustration, known to us as the princess of hill stations. Unilever came and left devastation as they exposed the land to contamination. So here's the story. They set up a thermometer factory where workers handle toxic mercury. They dump their waste in the local shrubbery. Now that's some toxic shit. By the way, what they say, that the factory was safe as day. They don't trust a word of what the workers say. What about the polluting, the mercury poisoning? It's life-threatening, there's kids suffering. Poison in the soil, you don't have a spoil. Your cleanup was a sham, there's poison in the air. You ain't done, done. Kodaikanal won't, Kodaikanal won't, Kodaikanal won't step down till you make amends now. Unilever, clean up your mess. Unilever, clean up your mess. Unilever, I said clean up your mess. Clean up your mess, that's right, clean up your mess. Unilever has been hiding behind their fake PSAs and Pepsodent smiles. They wash their hands off Kodai with life. Boy, there's nothing fair or lovely about this trial. But this is real. Prolonged exposure got many men killed. There's children born being seriously ill. The environment is polluted still. Now that's some toxic shit. By the way, what they say, that the factory was safe as day. They don't trust a word of what the workers say. What about the polluting, the mercury poisoning? It's life-threatening, there's kids suffering. Poison in the soil, you don't have a spoil. Your cleanup was a sham, there's poison in the air. You ain't done. Kodaikanal won't, Kodaikanal won't step down until you make amends now.
Thank you.